Welcome back, truth seekers, to Tales of the Divine and Damned. What if I told you the most famous monster in the world was never meant to be a monster at all?
For nearly 15 centuries, people from entirely different eras, monks, fishermen, scientists have all described the same impossible thing.
Not a legend passed down blindly, not a fairy tale, but encounters, face-to-face, boat rocking, water boiling encounters.
Tonight, we're not asking if something lives in Loch Ness.
We're asking what and why is it still there? The earliest known account comes from the year 565 AD, recorded in a text called Vita Columbae. This was not folklore written centuries later. It was a near contemporary biography.
The author, Ottoman, wasn't collecting ghost stories. He was documenting events he believed were historically and spiritually significant, including threats that local people genuinely feared.
According to the text, a man swimming in the river Ness is suddenly attacked. Witnesses on shore describe violent movement in the water, as though something large surged upward from below.
The man is killed, not injured, not chased, killed. And the creature doesn't linger. It retreats beneath the surface immediately afterward, which already suggests something deliberate rather than random.
When St. Columbae arrives, he confronts the creature verbally. The text describes the beast stopping, turning, and withdrawing as if it recognized a boundary it would not cross.
That detail matters. Predators don't stop mid-attack because someone yells at them. That implies awareness, caution, and something closer to intelligence than instinct.
For centuries, sightings remained sporadic until 1933. When a road is completed along the northern shore of Loch Ness. For the first time, ordinary people can continuously observe the water.
That's when George Spicer report one of the most disturbing encounters in the record. They don't describe a splash or a ripple. They describe a creature physically crossing the road in front of their car.
They estimate that it was over 20 feet long, with a thick gray body and a raised back. They specifically note the absence of visible limbs, which rules out most known animals immediately.
And then comes the detail people skip over. It didn't run. It moved slowly, purposefully, as if speed wasn't necessary.
Within weeks, newspapers are flooded with additional reports, many describing similar shapes, sizes, and movements. In 1934, a photograph taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson becomes the most famous image associated with Loch Ness.
Decades later, critics argue about hoaxes and models. But what never changes is this. The shape in the photograph matches descriptions that came before it.
Witnesses had already described a long neck, a small head, and a smooth rise from the water. The photograph didn't invent those features. It reinforced them.
Even skeptics admit something uncomfortable. If it was fake, it was designed to replicate an existing phenomenon people were already reporting independently.
In 1954, the fishing vessel Rival 3 reports an object pacing the boat beneath the surface. Their sonar locks onto something solid, maintaining speed and depth alongside them.
The crew describes the sensation of pressure beneath the hull, as through something massive displaced the water directly below them. This wasn't a fleeting contact. It lasted several minutes.
Then in 1960, aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale films a moving shape crossing the loch. Frame by frame analysis later confirms it was self-propelled.
No wave pattern matches it. No known boat matches it. And Dinsdale himself remained convinced until his death that he had filmed a living creature.
Other witnesses describe seeing eyes just above the surface. Dark, round, unblinking. Several report the sensation of being watched before seeing any movement at all.
That's not how people describe floating logs. That's how they describe encounters.
In 1960, a monster hunter by the name of Tim Dinsdale packed up his belongings, kissed his wife and children goodbye, and left his home in the south of England to come here, to the bonny banks of Loch Ness, to go monster hunting.
Tim Dinsdale, a former aeronautical engineer, now a full-time resident monster hunter. He literally lives on the loch in his boat, the Waterhorse.
It's a very difficult job, no doubt about that. The photography's difficult, the conditions are difficult, the odds are difficult, people get disappointed and put off. But we'll get a lot of film, and we'll get some very dramatic stuff, and people will be very surprised, I think.
The first expedition that my father did was in April 1960. Well, I was acutely aware that Dad was going off monster hunting. He had acquired a camera and he was setting it up, tinkering with it. All was loaded into the 1950s Austin Anglia that he had. And I can remember that he removed the passenger seat, and that would be where the tripod would go, and he'd be able to drive along and, like an air gunner, would be able to fire through the window.
What was needed was a movie film, and in April 1960, Tim Dinsdale got it.
Tim, how close are we to the exact spot where you had your famous film shot?
Well, pretty close. It was down there about 20, 30 yards, I would think. Inside the car, I had the camera on a tripod on my left, and I stopped the car, had a fairly quiet look at it through binoculars, and while I was watching it through binoculars, I could see it very clearly. It came to life and it started to move off, and then I turned and started to shoot the film. While I was watching it, it started to move. A most electrifying moment. It looked like the back of a huge animal, reddish brown. It stood 2 or 3 feet out of the water, 4 or 5 feet across. And then it approached the far shore, and then under the surface, throwing up a wave which has since been measured on the film at a height of about 2 feet.
I can remember watching this for the first time in the front room of my parents' home through a projector. And I remember watching and being so disappointed because it was so indistinct. He was quite disappointed with the way that this had turned out because, like most photography, it doesn't actually come out in the way that you recall seeing it with your naked eye.
The film couldn't possibly be the same when you see it on the screen as it was, you know, seeing it from here with your own eyes.
Oh, no, well, you know. But it did capture what I saw. What's on the film is what I saw.
And he was completely convinced, which is why he spent so much time and virtually the rest of his life trying to get a better piece of film of it.
Well, I'm going to go on, if necessary, for 20 years, because I think that's a fair research period for anybody, and I shall then be 55.
The film may have been in black and white, but Tim Dinsdale talked in Technicolor. His enthusiasm, his conviction, his integrity inspired others to come hunting for the monster.
One of the strongest consistencies across reports is how the water behaves. Witnesses repeatedly describe large V-shaped wakes forming on calm days with no wind.
Others mention localized turbulence, water churning violently in a small area while the surrounding surface remains flat and undisturbed.
Several boaters report sudden changes in buoyancy, as though something passed directly beneath them and altered the pressure around the hull.
That kind of displacement requires mass, and mass requires explanation.
Modern sonar surveys repeatedly detect large, moving objects at depth. These are not stationary anomalies. They descend, change direction, and vanish vertically.
In 2018, environmental DNA studies revealed genetic material that could not be confidentially assigned to known species.
This doesn't confirm a monster, but it confirms uncertainty.
And Loch Ness is deep, cold, and lightless, over 700 feet in places. A perfect environment for something adapted to remain unseen.
Theories range from unknown eel species to relic populations of ancient animals.
But none fully explain the neck movement, the repeated eyewitness proximity, or the sonar behavior.
What remains undeniable is the continuity of reports.
Something has been observed here again and again.
History doesn't usually agree with itself this well.
And water doesn't lie.
Whatever lives or lived in Loch Ness left a trail of testimony we can't erase.
So the question isn't belief.
It's explanation. Until next time, truth seekers, remember, some legends are divine.
And some legends are downright
Damned.